Hello, this is Reverend Paul Jansen from United Reformed Church in Somerville, New Jersey. Here I am at my desk again in my corner, bringing you a good word on the weekend of August 13th, 2023. The word this week is based on one of the more familiar Psalms to most people, Psalm 121, which begins with these famous words, "I lift up my eyes to the hills. From whence does my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made the heavens and the earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore." Well, if you've been watching in recent weeks, we're on a course of working our way through question and answer 1 of the Heidelberg Catechism. And this week we are at that section that says of Christ, "He also watches over me in such a way that not a hair can fall from my head without the will of my Father in heaven." Well, aside from the sense that image kind of makes you feel that Jesus is a little bit of a stalker, kind of watching you 24/7, not a hair can fall, not one. Because if that's the case, God's been pretty busy willing hairs to fall off of my head. And then there are how many billions of people in the world? And we haven't even gotten to big things yet, like wars and the environment and healing people in the hospital. Surely God has better things to do with God's time than to fiddle with follicles. It just seems like such a strange thing for Jesus to say, but Jesus did say something about this. It came right from his mouth, but we have to look at the context of it. If we look at the context of his comment about God watching over our hair, we'll come to something meaningful and helpful and good. It comes up in the Gospel according to Luke in the 21st chapter. Jesus and his friends have been sitting in the temple watching the goings-on, like the rich man who came in and clanked several heavy coins into the copper offering bowl, and then the woman who blinked in just less than one miserable penny's worth. But just after that story, Jesus launches into what's often called the little apocalypse, or if you prefer, the short version of what's going to happen when the world as we know it falls apart, apocalyptically. In what is surely not your favorite passage from the Bible, this is what Jesus says is coming. The temple will be turned over, leaving no stone unturned. There will be wars, insurrections, international wars, earthquakes, famines, plagues, evil omens every which way you turn. And did I mention that you'll be witnessing or hearing about this from inside a jail cell, where you'll be all alone because your family has abandoned you? They sold you out in the first place. At least the ones of you who survive will be witnessing it, and that's not going to be all of you by a long stretch. Doesn't exactly make you feel all uplifted and warm and cozy, does it? But, said Jesus, in the midst of all this, in the midst of all of this horrible stuff happening, don't be afraid, because while all of this awfulness is occurring, and while it will be tempting to pay attention to the fact that everyone else's hair is on fire, as for you, not a hair on your head will perish. God will be with you. In fact, while everyone else is looking down at their feet for fear or just barely mustering up the courage to look around, says Jesus, you, my friends, as for you, look up. Lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. It's close at hand. We're almost there. The fruit is ripe for the picking. Things are coming very close to what they were always meant to be when all of this awful stuff is happening. Things are near what they were always meant to be. That's really the apocalyptic word of this little word apocalypse, because in Greek the word apocalypse, at its root it means taking the lid off. Taking the lid off or revealing, sometimes the word revelation, the name of the last book in the Bible, Revelation, is called the apocalypse. It's taking the lid off to show what things really mean. That involves all sorts of horrible bits, yes, but God, who promised to redeem his people, will keep his promise. And God's chosen people includes the friends of Jesus just as surely as it includes the offspring of Abraham. See, that's the thing about not a hair falling from the head. It's not about 21st centuries and pattern baldness. It's a bold reassurance way out there, beyond the seasons of mere inconvenience, way out there when the last seconds of the world clock are winding down. God will preserve you. God will keep you. God will keep you. And that's a very bold thing to say. Who of us has a right to call God on that promise with ocean water topping 100 degrees off the Florida coast and glacial dams popping open in Alaska and long dead bugs emerging from the frozen tundra? How could any one of us have the audacity to say, don't you worry about a thing, because every little thing going to be all right? I get it. But I keep coming to the fact that this article of faith, this idea, this confidence that God will keep us, it's not something that we just made up to help ourselves feel better in our own apocalyptic times. It's a thread that's been woven through the story of God's people for thousands of years, right back to Father Abraham and Mother Sarah. As for me, I got it from my mother. I remember she called me one night when I was afraid for her to leave me and to calm myself and go to sleep. And she taught me, be not dismayed, whate'er betide, God will take care of you. Not a hair will fall from your head. You'll be okay, little Paul. How did you catch it? This idea. Who told you that God was your keeper? Our ancestors heard it and sang it during that period in their history when they were walking back to Jerusalem, back home after decades in exile in Babylon and then Persia, 1,000 miles walking back home. Some of them were having a bit of a time, remembering what their faith was made of and whether it would be strong enough to build their new lives on once they got back to the holy city and Mount Zion, where God's palm touched the earth and blessed it. Over and over again, they sang it then, like an incantation in Psalm 121, which is one of the most favorite passages of the Bible for millions of people. This is how they said it over and over again. God who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Keep. This kind of repetition wouldn't set you very well with a middle school English teacher. So what's going on here? Why is this word keep so important? Well, the one Hebrew word that shows up in every one of these 6 keeps is the word, or a version of the root shomer or shamar, which means, probably means as little to you right now as it did when I started digging into it. But here's what it means. A shomer is a watchman, a guard, a special kind of guard. You see, they lived in an agriculturally based society, and in large part, they depended on what they grew to stay alive. They might have gone to some kind of market, I'll grant you that, but certainly not a grocery store like we can. So you see, if you depend on what you grow to survive, then you need to be watching it. You need to be paying attention to it, especially at night when critters might come out of the wilderness to get a taste of your ripe on the vine produce, or some other two-legged beast might come over and decide that your tomatoes look better than theirs. What the shomer did, the shomer was the watchman. The shomer climbed up a ladder, sometimes a tower, and all night long paid attention. Not just to what was happening in the garden, but also watched beyond the garden for invaders, two-legged or four-legged. You see why you didn't want the keeper to slumber nor sleep? That's important. The watchman slumbers, you go hungry. If God falls asleep, you wither on the vine. Thing is, except for when it looks like the weather is on the horizon, the gardener's eyes are always on the weeds, looking for plants that don't belong or pests that need to be picked and destroyed. They're always on the guard for enemies, looking down. The gardener doesn't have time for the higher view. She trusts the shomer to keep her and her produce safe, and so to keep her family fed. Oh, critters do come, but the keeper didn't create them, didn't invite them. Because the shomer was on guard, the gardener could sleep at night, knowing that someone was staying awake on his behalf. Now, folks, isn't it safe to say that not a one of us knows the whole picture of what's going on in this world? We tend our own gardens, literally or metaphorically, and we don't get up there on the tower to keep on the lookout for invading critters. Well, they do come, don't they? And I'm not talking about raccoons or squirrels or deer or groundhogs, but serious beasts like addictions and relationship disasters and cancer and even untimely tragic death. But our keeper didn't invite them into the garden any more than we do. They do get in from time to time, yes, that's true, and we wonder how and we wonder why, even though there are times when we do invite them into our own gardens, if we're honest. But only the watchman knows what else is going on, what else is coming, what's going on beyond the temporary invasion of the wild beasts and the critters. Only the watchman knows what's happening in the big wide world and the whole vast future. We know in part. The Lord knows in full. So if we learn anything from our family album, by which I mean the Bible, we learn that God writes straight, but with crooked lines. God is honoring God's promise to bless the beloved ones, even when the beloved ones have lost our ability to lift our heads. Story after story after story in the scriptures tell us over and over again that what we in the moment may experience as evil, God may well be turning for good. It's just you can't see it at the moment. And yes, I know that if we were to sit down and have an argument about this, I know extreme cases make it hard to believe this, hard to believe that God is keeping us, that Christ is watching over us in such a way that not a hair can fall from our heads without the will of our Father in heaven. That can be as hard for churchgoers to believe as it is for the most hard-boiled atheist. Let's all just admit it. But here's the thing. If our confidence in God as our keeper were all just a load of hogwash, then really, how could it have sustained God's people for 3,000 years and counting? I'm not saying it's a good idea because it's an old idea, but if evidence that God had fallen asleep had been that strong, would any of us still keep holding on to the fraying fringe? There's something to be said. There's something to be said for honoring our fathers and mothers, honoring their faith, honoring faith that saw them through some really, really hard times that they probably didn't even share with us, there's something to be said for honoring their faith that kept on doggedly affirming, yes, the Lord is my keeper. He watches over me even when I can't see what the keeper sees. We hold on to this faith together. That's what confidence is, together faith. And sometimes one of us may lose our grip on the thread, and when that happens, we hold them up to the light and we reach out to them with one of our strands, and we hope they get a good grip and the thread grows stronger in the process. In the meantime, every day we wake up and we do what we do. And when night falls, we take our whole lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we kiss them to God. And we lay our more or less hairy heads down on our pillows, trusting God, our keeper, to neither slumber nor sleep. That's the good word for this week. I pray that God will have opened your eyes to trust God more fully and completely, as our ancestors have, as our friends do. And if that sense of faith is attenuated for you at the moment, I pray that you might reach out to someone so that your faith might be strengthened. Well, that's all for this week. I'll see you next week. Peace of Christ be with you, as always. See you then.